The franchise is a cornerstone of the pop culture landscape. The way many of our favorite stories can be reinterpreted into film, video games, comics, and more is what keeps the world of nerdy discussion going. Though in many ways it can negatively affect the series, it's also an easy way to make all sorts of fans across generations and even different groups. And the blueprint for the modern franchise is Star Wars. Who hasn't heard of Star Wars? It's practically impossible to avoid in daily life. Unless you've somehow found a way to completely isolate yourself, you definitely know what a Jedi is or a lightsaber and other stuff like that. Eventually, when a story becomes a large piece of the cultural zeitgeist, in then comes the parody. Many TV series and cartoons over the years have created countless episodes with gags related to the Star Wars saga. But what about episodes that center an entire episode or more around Star Wars in its entirety? Over the past weeks, I've rewatched a good few of them, and I want to talk about them. Have some of these specials aged poorly? Are they even funny? Or are they still a fun treat? Well, let's find out. So come along with me as I talk about some Star Wars specials. Okay, so up in the docket today, we have a few episodes that either came to mind when I thought of this video, and some episodes I decided to watch because a lot of sites listed them as a Star Wars episode. Before you comment, no, I wasn't able to watch literally every single Star Wars episode that has ever been made. I'm not an entity that exists out of time, so yeah, that's probably why I haven't watched all of them. Though I don't mind if you tell me what some of your favorite Star Wars specials are, just be reasonable with me, okay? I can't literally watch everything there is to be made. But with that little bit of info out of the way, let's get right into it. The 2000s were pretty much a revival period for all sorts of Star Wars media, and that is true for Star Wars episodes, of which the Family Guy Star Wars trilogy is one of the most iconic things to come out of this time frame. I had this first one on DVD, and I'd rewatch it all the time when I was like 11 years old or so, though I hadn't seen it in years since, well, watching all these specials for this video. Hopefully it still holds up. This episode is clearly a labor of love from the team. They go out of their way to be as faithful to the original trilogy cinematography, even if it completely goes against their usual style. Mind you, Family Guy is pretty much intentionally shot flat because it's made in reference to multi-camera sitcoms like Friends or Family Matters. Yet here they try out all sorts of new layouts and shot techniques. And I think I even noticed some 3D animation that blends in well with the 2D characters. It reminded me a lot of Futurama, which is one of the best science fiction series of all time, by the way. I tried to look up if Rough Draft Studios worked on these episodes at all, and I couldn't find anything. This special is set up in an interesting way. Usually these specials are either set up as the cast of a show meeting or interacting with characters, or just using the characters outright. Instead, it's the Family Guy characters playing various characters from the original trilogy, which I think with that premise comes some hit and misses, but we'll come back to that later. Family Guy's style of humor for me is a bit here and there. Some gags are great, some kind of fall flat. The best jokes in the special are usually built around tweaking moments from the films or pointing out odd things from the movies. Though some of the more absurdist or dialogue-driven humor is pretty good too, but it's usually at its best when taking a concept or a scene and twisting it. I can immediately think of the gag with the couch and the trash compactor. It works because it takes a pretty quick scene in the original film and adds layers of absurdity to it, as well as some believability. But a lot of the more insert person here type gags are just okay, usually just resulting in a pity chortle from me. For example, I feel like the bit with Magic Johnson talking about raiding the Death Star would be funny, but they overcommit to it. Then it just kind of drones on, and I don't really laugh at it. It's not that humorous. Same thing with Obi-Wan, singing Time of My Life. On paper, it is pretty funny, but it goes on for so long. I understand jokes like that can be funny, but it usually has gotta be funny first, and then stoop down to not being funny, and then being dragged for so long that it eventually becomes humorous again. I don't know, humor is subjective, but I think this is a bit of a flaw with Family Guy in general. I still think there's a lot of memorable jokes though. For example, the gag with John Williams and the London Symphony Orchestra. The first gag is fine, but then they bring it back, and seeing all the orchestra members and John Williams burnt to death like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru is a great twist. It's a good way to bring something back in and make it funnier. Overall, the special is super solid, though some jokes can be a bit of a mixed bag. Hopefully the next special is even better. In my notes, I have even less memorable bits written in here than in comparison to Blue Harvest. I'm gonna be real, maybe this is controversial. I think I liked Blue Harvest more. There's still some good stuff in here. The running gag of Han being a complete ass to Leia the entire time is a good gag. I especially love the
"You're gonna attack them? You're gonna attack them?" That's how you sound.
Come on, that's really funny. There's also some bits in here though that just don't land for me or just go on for way too long. For example, the Tauntaun joke. I get it, it's meant to be long, but there's nothing really being added here. The same thing with the Tauntaun being Don Knotts for some reason. I mean, Don Knotts is a legendary comedic actor, but what does his style of comedic delivery do to make the Tauntaun more funny? It's a funny visual for sure, but other than that, it doesn't really do much. It doesn't make me laugh. There's also the gag where Peter keeps shooting inside the Exogorth, the worm thing that lives inside the asteroid. It just keeps on going. I feel like taking the original scene and maybe adding like 1 or 2 more shots into it to figure out what's going on could be funny, but they go on for like, I think about 10 shots. While watching it, I thought he was gonna like shoot Leia in the leg or something, which would have made the scene much more funny and absurd, but overall I just think the joke was okay. A lot of the best jokes here are the ones that are pretty quick. The handicap placard gag got a good laugh out of me. The scene just turning into a realistic moment of the characters judging Han is honestly really good. It kind of caught me off guard. But I don't know, a lot of the other gags didn't really click with me because they're either going on too long or just references to other things or just not really character-driven humor. The animation is still really good here, I'd say even better than the last one, and there are honestly some good visual gags outside of the Tauntaun Don Knotts. Honestly, I don't think I love this one as much as the last. Maybe I'll like the next one even more. I'm gonna be real, I think this one is actually a lot tighter than the last, but it's not perfect either. I think this has the best title crawl gag out of any of these specials. Just reading as this writer basically admits to giving up and then seems to go a bit off the deep end is really a good setup for a joke. Its devil-may-care attitude is the right amount of absurd. It's a bit of a fourth wall break, but not in a way that comes off too obnoxious. Though I can also tell they ran out of Family Guy characters they wanted to put in, so they did American Dad characters. Now, I don't really mind, because I like American Dad. I like it more than Family Guy, I'd say, but I really doubt they couldn't find any other characters to put in. Here they do a lot more jokes that tie into the story at hand, like with the joke of blind Han shooting Lando in the body a few times. It feels like the gag with the Exogorth in the last special, but it's better paced and gets the idea moving across better. It's a gag that goes on for a bit, but it's quicker and less in the way of actually getting the story moving along. There's also a lot more absurd gags that just work for me here, like the gag with Luke putting his head out the window. It's a good visual joke that pokes fun at the whole people can sense each other trope. I think the best gag here though is the beehive gag. It actually does feel like something Brian would do, and just his body all screwed up with bee stings as he repeats, I think, before passing out it's just comedy gold for me. To be fair, I also just like jokes where the pain feels realistic but it's still a bit cartoonish, I don't know. Also, the visual gag where Stewie's neck is still broken even as a Force ghost got me good, I won't lie. I think this is actually a pretty solid episode. If I had to place them best to worst, I'd probably go Blue Harvest, It's a Trap, and then Dark Side. That's probably controversial, but hey man, I watch them all and that's how I feel. Also, it's my video. I think these specials are really dependent on how much you like Family Guy, especially during the era they were released in. Now, I like some Family Guy, mostly the first 3 to 4 seasons, but I don't know, I think there's a lot to love about these episodes, but I feel like I much preferred most of the other specials I watched after these 3. Speaking of which, there was one series that beat Family Guy to the punch in making a Star Wars special, and that series was... Robot Chicken is one of the staples of Adult Swim. It's probably the longest running and most dependable series on that network. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. It's all action figures, stop motion, and quick skits with no overarching plot. On paper, this really wouldn't work on most networks. But Adult Swim has always championed a lot of outsider series, and Robot Chicken is no exception. Personally, I have a lot of warm feelings about Robot Chicken's Star Wars episodes, even more than Family Guy's. I'd watch it all the time on YouTube or just rent the DVD from the library a lot. For this segment, I'll be talking about all 3 episodes together, unlike the family episodes because, well, the Robot Chicken episodes are just all sketches. There isn't exactly a separate narrative for each one like the Family Guy specials. Plus, I think these all go down nicely as a package deal instead of separate episodes. So here I'll just talk about some of my favorite bits and maybe some that I think don't work. Let me just say, Robot Chicken Boba Fett is the best Boba Fett. He's probably the funniest and best written character in this whole series, though he has some competition with Palpatine, Yara Poof, and Gary. The writers made Boba Fett this guy with his head up his own ass. In a way, it's kinda like how fans of Boba Fett will talk about him. Respectfully, Boba looks really cool, but when it comes to characters that are just really cool and have that factor to them, I think you got better characters you could pick from. Kyle Katarn? Revan, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Cad Bane, Book of Boba Fett doesn't count, Darth Maul, hell, even Jango Fett. So here it feels like maybe Boba is a reflection of that and airs up his own ego. Maybe I'm giving the writers too much credit, but that's why I think he's funny. Also, Boba is just insanely well animated in these specials. It's crazy. He has a lot of the best animation here. Palpatine is also great in these specials because they kind of make him just a guy. I mean, the special starts strong as the first sketch is literally just one with him in it. The scene with him on the phone with Vader and blowing up in anger is really well written. It feels like a real conversation that has a lot of good beats of comedy, and I don't know, I always laugh when he starts laughing about Vader crying on the phone. It's really messed up, but it's so funny. Yara Poof is also a great character in these specials because he's literally a nobody, a literal glup shitto who has done nothing of notice in the story at all. But here they make him the only reasonable person in the Jedi Council, a sort of straight man character who gets the short end of the stick and it works. Dan Milano, his voice actor in these specials, does a great job at making this character, who on paper would be annoying, very likable. The gag where he comes back and the council is all dead and he starts mimicking them is just some perfect comedy, and let's be honest, we all would have probably done it too in his position. And finally, the other breakout star, Gary the Stormtrooper. Just an average guy trying to make his way in the Imperial world. He has one of my favorite gags in the whole series. The one where he hits the Ewok as he's driving the speeder and he just continues to screw up his mercy killing. I don't know, maybe it's just because I like dark humor and stuff like that, but I think this works really well and doesn't go too far in the end of violent. He works because he fits into the whole trope of an average guy in an absurd world, a trope that I think always makes for some good comedy. Life of Brian from Monty Python is a good example of this trope as well. His delivery is also really good. It has this naturalism to his voice, but nothing that feels too forced either. Donald Faison, I think that's how you pronounce it, does a great job here. And as for some of my favorite one-off gags, I think we gotta talk about the one where Jar Jar meets Darth Vader. For one, getting Ahmed Best back to play Jar Jar is just a great choice. I never thought his delivery as Jar Jar was bad, and we can tell that Jar Jar can be a funny character because these writers give him a lot of good material. It's like Jar Jar was made to exist in a cartoon world like this. My brother and I would watch this sketch on repeat. In fact, I still laugh at it to this day. Plus, Jar Jar's torture of Anakin never goes too far into becoming annoying or malicious. Instead, it has this Squidward and SpongeBob-like dynamic in the earlier seasons of SpongeBob. There's also the gag with the George Lucas and Gary the Nerd. I mean, having the man himself elevates this bit to a whole other level. Though obviously, there are some gags that don't hit as hard or have maybe aged strangely. Like the gag with George Bush. It's not bad, but it barely hits today because, well, we're pretty much 20 years removed by now, and we all know by this point, Bush was a moron who basically sent us into the shitter. Luckily, no other president would ever do that again. Ever. Nope. Anyways, there's also the Yo Mama fight gag, which, there's a good joke here, but it doesn't land for me. I feel like if this was taken more from a grounded level and then escalated to somewhere that's a bit more out there, it would be better, but overall, it's just an okay joke. Look, if I sat here all day and talked about every sketch of these episodes, we'd be here for a long time. I'll be honest, it's not just nostalgia, but these are my favorites so far. Robot Chicken's greatest strength is also, in a sense, its weakness. It's a collection of many rapid-fire jokes that come at you without slowing down. For some, this may be boring and maybe a flaw, but for me, I appreciate the time and effort that goes into making all these short sketches land. You gotta establish character, scenario, and several punchlines in the span of a minute or so. That takes effort, sure. Not every single one lands, but when it hits, it hits. I loved these episodes. But now, each special after this will just be singular episodes, since I don't think other shows did multi-part specials like Family Guy or Robot Chicken. So, let's just move on to... This one follows a bit more of a traditional structure when it comes to these kind of specials, finding a way to properly and seamlessly insert their characters into the narrative of an already established story. And I think Phineas and Ferb nailed it. I kind of expected this one to be good going in since, I'll be honest, I don't think Phineas and Ferb has ever had any outright bad episodes. I don't really care for their Marvel crossover, but that's not even bad, it's just okay. But here, they really went all in on making the Ferbiverse, I'm coining that term right here now, characters into Star Wars while still keeping them true to their character. For one, Phineas and Ferb are just the human embodiment of positivity and creativity, which they usually should be. Their song about Tatooine being the best way to introduce them into this world. To most, this world would just be a dead end, but to Phineas and Ferb, they're all about making the best out of most situations. To be honest, it made me forget for a moment that Tatooine would be a pretty awful place to live. Tatooine is the Arkansas of space. Nobody wants to live there, but hey, maybe Phineas and Ferb have a point. Not about Arkansas, I'm not going anywhere near Arkansas. The choice of making Candace a stormtrooper is so obvious yet so good that I'm surprised it wasn't thought of before the special. Plus, the whole visual of the banal, bureaucratic side of the Empire was nice to see. Take that, Andor, Phineas and Ferb did it first. Nah, I'm kidding, Andor is probably the best thing Star Wars has done since the Clone Wars. Maybe Mandalorian Seasons 1 and 2.
Why you boring me? I'm right!
They also did add Doofenshmirtz in the best way possible, making him a doofier, low-level Sith. I mean, most of the Sith by now were dead except for like maybe 3 or 4 of them, but I don't care, it's funny. The gag that the exhaust port of the Death Star was just another of Doof's self-destruct buttons is a clever way to tie in one of his character flaws. The songs that are incorporated in this special are really solid. I already mentioned Tatooine, but also the track In the Empire is really catchy and I find myself humming it here and there. The Darthenshmirtz song is probably the weakest song out of the batch, but it's not bad, it's mostly a comedic show tune. The final song is also pretty solid, but I think the first 2 songs are a much stronger showcase of the show's strong songwriting capabilities. The visuals are also stellar, finding a good way to mix the angular characters of Phineas and Ferb with the style of the original trilogy, though I couldn't help but notice that R2-D2 is the only CGI character. It just kinda made me laugh whenever I saw him because it's not like he's blended in poorly, but it has this sort of Smiling Friends vibe where a character of a completely different medium's just kinda sitting there, you know? Honestly, this special has a similar appeal to the Family Guy specials, but I feel like I enjoyed this one more overall. Maybe that's because I have a deeper attachment to Phineas and Ferb than I do Family Guy, but I feel like they found a nice middle ground for each series' unique styles. It doesn't feel as jarring when the special does a cutaway gag because they go by a lot quicker, such as the Sith roast
Decaf
gag. Though, in my defense, I love when any story shows you an in-universe advertisement as a joke or as a part of world building. I don't know, I just really like that stuff. This was just an overall fun time. But now we'll be leaving the world of animation with our next special. Let's talk about... From one Disney-owned property parodying another Disney-owned property to another one. Wait, actually almost everything mentioned so far is owned by Disney now. Oh, this is hell. I hate it here. The Muppet Show is no stranger to having on guest stars or doing special episodes. In fact, that's a large part of their appeal. And thus, the guest stars on this episode are C-3PO, R2-D2, Luke Skywalker, and his cousin, Mark Hamill. Man, Mark Hamill is such a joy to have on the show. Some Muppet guest stars seem like they still want to be taken completely seriously, yet Mark just wants to have fun, man. Plus, Mr. Hamill was already a pretty accomplished voice actor by this point, so seeing him do some of his voice work is great. The whole gargling song they do is a treat. It's even funnier when Mark and Luke are consistently swapping places, yet look exactly the same excluding just different outfits. Personally, I love jokes like this because while it is dumb, it does take a lot of effort to pull off just right. Part of me wonders if this joke was created to sort of keep the fantasy alive in the minds of all the children who might have been watching. You know, the idea that Luke Skywalker is a real person to some extent. Just seeing Luke Skywalker raiding the Muppets theater as they all panic about what to do next is just a really good set of jokes. Funnily enough, they'd have the Star Wars crew in their Star Trek parody sketch. Kind of funny since both are seen as kind of competitors in the sci-fi space, yet could it be any more different tonally and even philosophically? I've always said Star Wars is like 60% fantasy and 40% sci-fi, whereas Trek is 100% sci-fi, but I digress. The whole song and dance at the end where the Star Wars crew has no idea what to do and Luke doesn't even want to be involved is just pretty funny, man. And it does suit the characters since I doubt any of them have any singing or dancing ability. The song at the end where they sing When You Wish Upon a Star and the castle rises out of the ground behind them is crazy. It feels like real-world foreshadowing. But that wouldn't come to fruition for years. It's a strange contrast to the world we're in now where Disney's run of Star Wars has just been okay. I don't think it's as bad as some people online will tell you. And Disney basically does nothing with the Muppets now. It's a shame because their 2 movies they made are actually pretty good and probably some of the best Muppet films. This episode isn't anything too out of the ordinary for the Muppets, but that's not really a bad thing because the Muppet Show is just a good time. Great stuff here. Community is one of my favorite shows of all time, if we don't count season 4 and parts of seasons 5 and 6. But those first 3 seasons are lightning in a bottle. Community has many special episodes, but they go about it in ways that are closer to homages or pastiches than anything more direct. Though let's be real, we all know that the episode For a Few Paintballs More is meant to be directly referencing Star Wars. Abed is literally Han Solo in this episode after all. It's pretty funny considering the episode before this was an homage to Westerns, which many parts of Star Wars were inspired by that same genre. George Lucas even said himself that the Jedi were based on the law marshals of the Old West. Of course, they're also inspired by knights, Buddhist monks, and samurai. Star Wars has a lot of influences, okay? Nowadays, a lot of shows try to be meta with their humor, but I feel like Community is the only show that really understood how to make that style of humor work without ever having to always spell it out or lampshade it. It less focuses on fourth wall breaks and outwardly lampshading itself, but instead takes these moments of narrative and sort of chops it up and to make it into a whole new idea. Sometimes they just straight up say what they're referencing, and it works here in this episode because, it's so apparent what they're doing. The villain literally has an army of soldiers all in white against a small group of people in raggedy clothes. That's Star Wars, there's no way around it. This episode is also hard carried by its characters, but then again, a good cast is what makes good comedy. Troy has definitely got the best one-liners in this episode, but that's usually true of most episodes, such as when he says Juggernaught, or when they somehow find a way to reference Platoon and make it work. Yet, they give every character something to do. It's not a small cast either, but they find ways to weave every character in and out. The ending also makes complete sense, Pierce weaseling his way into a victory. One of the few times his manipulative nature has benefited everyone and not just him, which also leads to a great character work out of him. They always find ways to make this show take completely nonsensical comedy plots and backdrop it with some genuine human moments. Also, the whole joke of Abed being super into character with Han Solo and then just swapping back to his usual self after he quote-unquote dies in the game is pretty funny. I'm gonna be real, Abed could easily be a great actor and director, kind of like Stephen Chow in Kung Fu Hustle. Man, it's hard for me to hate this era community. I had a great time watching this one too. But up next is an episode from a show I've never seen before. I want to say here before starting this, I only watched this episode because whenever I'd Google online shows with Star Wars episodes, this would come up. Now, I haven't seen much of Scrubs at all, as in I haven't even seen an episode all the way through. I've stumbled at clips here and there, but never enough to really grasp at the style and the humor of the show. So I was kind of disappointed when this episode wasn't a Star Wars episode at all. There is one entire joke that is a Star Wars cutaway gag, and that's it. All these websites and such have basically deceived me. Sure, this episode is about JD's struggle with his two influences on him at his job, which he works at a hospital by the way, but that premise isn't unique to Star Wars. Themes of choosing between whether to embrace your good or bad side have been a theme in stories since, human existence as we know it. Spider-Man, Adam and Eve, Macbeth, the Iliad all have themes of this too. But that's fine, I'll just talk about the episode as it is, and it's alright I guess. This is an episode that's pretty early in the series, so I don't think I should judge too harshly, but I didn't really click with this at all. Mostly because its humor and style kinda caught me off guard. I genuinely didn't expect how much internal monologuing JD would do, and the cutaway gags as well kinda caught me off guard. It's nothing new in this type of sitcom, but the way they handled it is a bit jarring to me. Such as the bit where he acts like a dog for his boss, and also the constant cartoonish whoosh sounds were kinda screwing with me too. It made me think of That 70s Show, but then I remembered they don't even do it that often. Honestly, my favorite plotline from the story is actually Turk's, this sweet sentimental-ish story about a man trying to do right by the woman he's dating. There's a bit of very early 2000s jokes about it, but I appreciate that Turk doesn't try to play into it too hard. Sure, he's into her, but he also goes out of his way to get her a gift that she'd genuinely appreciate. He has a great ending moment in the story where he shows he appreciates her outside of her body. It's just good stuff. I think this is meant to be paralleled by Elliot's story of her flashing people. There's a kernel of something funny here, but to me it just kind of feels flat. She flashes a 13-year-old boy and that somehow makes his white blood cell count go up? Lady, are you trying to catch a case? Because that's a fucking case, lady. That's weird. You're weird. There is a moment where it's an idea for a good bit where she flashes a dead patient thinking that he'll rise back from the dead. Now, that could be funny, but they just zoom past this joke entirely. Despite what I said earlier, this is actually a joke that should have been held on for a little bit more to make an awkward moment. Really let us cook in that awkward feeling here. It would have at least gotten a chuckle out of me if he'd done that. Look, I want to add here, I'm not a prude. One of my favorite series of all time is South Park. The Queef episode is hysterical, and that is far more sexual and gross than the tit flashing joke in this episode. If this joke just took another step into something a bit more absurd, then it'd be funny. But literally it doesn't go anywhere. We don't even see Elliot face any repercussions. The only time I laughed during this entire plotline is when the old men came out and they said they have an illness, so they need to see breasts. See, now that's a funny moment with some repercussions. There's good moments here. Overall, I thought this episode was okay. I really think there could have been moments here that would have been better with some tweaking. Also, this isn't even a Star Wars episode. It has a Star Wars joke. It's not a Star Wars special, Collider. Get your head out of your ass. You're probably suffocating in there. That's all the Star Wars specials I watched for this video. It goes to show that Star Wars is a special property. It's a story that is super unique and can be used in many different ways, such as comedy. Part of me misses this time of entertainment where you'd see more crossovers and different ideas instead of the safe corporate stuff we get now. These are all special and different in their own way, even if I didn't care for them all. In many ways, we use parody to express our love of something, because if we absolutely hated what we were poking fun at, then it wouldn't be fun, would it? I just hope in the future we get more fun little specials like these. If we're even still in a world that can make that happen. But for now, I think I'm fine with what we got. And yeah, that's all I gotta talk about for this video. What are some of your favorite Star Wars specials? Were they in this video or were they not? Let me know in the comments below. And do you agree with me on any of my takes? I know there's definitely going to be some agreement and definitely some disagreement. But hey, let's actually try to keep it civil in the comments below, okay? And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.